So Freemasonry, you wanted to ask a question yesterday? What was your question?
Yes, I've heard that Mozart was a Freemason, and Haydn and all the...
Haydn, I don't know about Haydn, but Mozart, there is a painting of him attending a Masonic lodge. I mean, his features resemble that of Mozart. And the theme of some of his operas are written by Beaumarchais, by Masonic authors. And the Enchanted Flute, they say that he is the hymn of Freemasonry. And what else about Mozart? And Austria was loaded with Freemasons in his time. But also, what Freemasonry does, it has several layers. So it loves to co-opt, glamorous people, because the way Freemasonry works, where the main strength of Freemasonry is the leverage of friendship. They offer friendship. They offer you money. They offer you help. They offer you assistance. And Mozart was always broke. He was always in debts and everything. But he brings a glamour with him. So I'm not surprised that the Freemasons were very nice to him, got near him, and were able to nudge him into a Masonic lodge. It's possible.
He also wrote a piece for the dedication of a Masonic temple.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but he could have been a Freemason, but not a higher one. Just because he never cared about, those are the people who don't care about destroying the church or anything. But he needed to pay his debts, and he didn't care much for his faith. So I think that's the interest of this encyclical. It explains the different layers. Like in Freemasonry, the Masons always claim in France Général de Sony, who is a great French Catholic person, famous Catholic of his times. But de Sony was never a Freemason. And then you have those types of Freemasons that are, famous, good guys, but never did much else than what they were famous for, like Baden-Powell, the founder of the Boy Scout movement. So later on you're going to have lots of Catholic Boy Scouts, and they take Baden-Powell as a model, knowing that he is a Freemason. Why? Because in the British high society, you had to be one. So I think Freemasonry is subtle enough to, they are intelligent enough to understand the value to co-opt people. Not necessarily that these people would be rabid anti-Catholics. That's one of the tricks of Freemasonry. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Mozart was rabid anti-Catholic. Probably, he puts his soul in danger, not listening to the church censures and everything. I don't think he was granted ecclesiastical burial. I don't think so. If I remember well.
He died. He was buried in a pauper's grave.
Pauper's grave, yes. So if he was a Mason, the Masons dumped him. So they were bad friends. I'm not quite sure, if he was, a full-blown Mason or somebody desperate for money. I'm not quite sure. He would take whatever works he was commissioned for to make money. So I think he never cared for politics all that much. He was an artist. He was very very freaky, So, yeah. But they love to say this one was ours. Like they say Jacques de Molay is our founder. No, there's a big gap between Jacques de Molay and when they started. But they want to take the credit for the injustice wrought on Jacques de Molay. Jacques de Molay. Most historians now are rehabilitating Jacques de Molay and say he was innocent. I mean, most of the Catholic historians I've read. But it's a nice story, so they put without qualms, they put those guys into their lore, to give themselves a glamour. which does not belong to them. When so many Masons at the French Revolution became murderers, and wicked people, or in the Philippines they are all thieves. But they need to present themselves with a benevolent, honest exterior. I think that's the game they are playing. The claim of Mozart, it sounds nice and conspiratorial, and probably Mozart did this. Probably he did goof up, because he goofed up on so many other things. He's all over the place. Mozart is all over the place.
All over the world, probably. He had influenced a great deal of music.
What I mean, all over the place, that he's very messy character.
Oh.
You see his family life. He couldn't run a house, because the only thing he cared for was to write music, basically. So if he attended that lodge, I don't think he was paying much attention to what he was doing. And it was also, in his time, it was fashionable to go in the Masonic lodge. It was a trend. It was very trendy. All those stories, those initiatic things, for them that was exciting. Now nobody cares.
But he had many patrons, probably.
Yes. And anybody would give him money, he would work for. He was always desperate for money. So
that's how we got in touch with the Freemasons?
Yeah, Freemasons, they hunt for these type of people.
Oh.
Yeah. Because they are vulnerable.
Yeah.
But they probably are, they used him more than he used them. Because if you say that he died a pauper without any money, it means he was dumped by his brothers. If he made them his brothers, and none of them showed up to bury him. I don't say that the behavior of the Prince Archbishop of Salzburg was nice to him either. Okay, and then Emperor Joseph was an idiot. Like in a movie they show. Joseph was Joseph was a Mason, and he was a Masonic idiot. He was a true idiot. So I would say, the Masons can take more credit for Joseph than for Mozart. Because if he was a member, they dumped him. They abandoned him. And now that he's dead, they take the credit. Well, that's typical of them. So, where were we? The two loves and two cities. As soon as the constitution and the spirit of the Masonic sect were clearly discovered by manifest signs of its actions, by cases investigated, by the publication of its laws and of its rights and commentaries, I think we read this, the documents of Freemasonry were found. The police would find the Masonic sects, they would find out what they were planning to, or the things they executed. Like in a crime, you can sometimes find who's done it. So once in a while, the secrets of Freemasonry are exposed. Like in the 1970s, there was a journal, Atletico, or an Italian journal, that published the list of Masonic cardinals and bishops in Rome, and those who were in the Vatican. 3 persons involved into the leaking of that list were killed within a month. But that list was nevertheless published and broadcast by Father Villa. That's a famous list where we got the names of Bea, Vio, Casaroli, all these guys. No, Bertone that's later. But Silvestrini. So we have those people. We have the list around the 70s. That didn't happen again. We are just guessing that Bertone is a Freemason, that Welle is a Freemason. most likely, because he is in charge of the appointing of bishops. And then we see by the fruits Bishop Di Falco attends Freemasonry and is known for that. The French president of the Episcopal Conference also takes part in what is called a white reunion of the Freemasons. Tenue blanche in French. It means it's gathering of Freemasons where they are taking in guests. And the way Bishop 23 talks, Archbishop 23 of Paris, the way Cardinal Barbarin behaves, and they're all endorsing the principles of Freemasonry, which is secular humanism, the la laïcité, as they say in French. So the modern Jacobin anti-Catholic state. So they do show their connection to Freemasonry, but we do not have that definite list, like the one that was leaked before, and around which three people were massacred for its leaking in the 70s. And there are, these the P2 Lodge scandal, with the Banco Ambrosiano, that thing. That's real. That's also a sign of Freemasonry. I'm pretty sure, Benedict XVI is a Freemason. Then you got some conspiracy signs like the Masonic handshake. You put the thumb on the knuckles of the hand. Is that how do you call this?
Knuckles.
The knuckles. Yeah. Put your thumb on the knuckle of the hand. You are shaking. The Masonic handshake. Those are secondary signs. But the main sign that they belong all to Freemasonry is that they speak like Masons and walk like Masons. Who speaks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, is a duck. And when Paul VI dies, the Masons are making mausolea to Paul VI, and these have Masonic symbology on it. And they recognize him as one of the greatest Masons. The burial of Paul VI, with the bare coffin, that on the ground, that's typically Mason, or it's also a Jewish rite of burial. You got those signs, right? Dr. Ramsey, the Archbishop of Canterbury, or the schismatic Archbishop of Canterbury, when Paul VI meets him, they exchange rings, or Paul VI puts his ring on Dr. Ramsey's finger. That's a sign of Masonic acquaintance. And the band cross of Paul VI, the ugly audience hall of the Vatican, with the resurrection, like Christ coming out of the mud, that ugly thing is satanic. It looks like the throne of the beast. It's really awful. So they are using the things that Masons would use. On this, there are other layers. The gay lobby comes in, and the all the other errors, of modernism, of course, and then they connive with everything. But no, the goal of Freemasonry is to unite all religions. That's the goal. He says, as I told you before, the goal of that city is unity at the detriment of the truth and at the detriment of virtue. So this desire for unity is a Masonic. Like when Cardinal Bea is about to die, he wrote a book, He servido la unità. I have served the unity. They always quote John, that they may be one. That they want a unity of the human race, but not in the terms dictated by our Lord Jesus Christ. They don't accept these terms. So this apostolic see denounced that sect of the Freemasons and publicly declared its constitution as contrary to the law and right, to be pernicious no less to Christendom than to the state. And it forbade anyone to enter in society under penalties with the churches want to, I think we read that thing already. Branded as pernicious. Yeah. Paragraph 7. But what is of highest importance in the course of events has demonstrated the prudence of our predecessors. For their provident and paternal solicitude had not always and everywhere the result desired. Only in a minority of places where the popes listened to, like Malta or Garcia Moreno's Equator, or rare places where they listened to. And this either because of the simulation and cunning of some who were active agents in the mischief, because they know how to lay low, or else of the thoughtlessness, levity of the rest who ought, in their own interest, to have given to the matter their diligent attention. That's the levity of the 18th century. For them, it was of no importance to be a member of Freemasonry. It was just a game. And indeed, for most of the French nobility, it was a game. They took it as a game, as a funny thing to do, as a fashionable thing. It was a fashion for the French nobility. And this was the age of the 18th century, which was a very frivolous age. Nobody cared. Nobody cared for ideas in general. You only had the Jesuits sounding the horn, but everybody else was not taking the problem seriously. And so there was this levity, this of spirit that allowed them to, because they always say, "Oh, we're just philanthropic. We are. They make us, they demonize us, but we're not come in and watch. We are not as bad as they say. Come in and check us out." Sure enough, in this introduction or in the meetings for the outsiders, they show a very innocent, harmless attitude. They look very harmless, very benevolent as well. And since they like the opposé, they like to go for the cream of the cream, so they make an interesting group of people, powerful people or highly educated people. They won't recruit nobodies. Or if they recruit nobodies, then they will do a lodge for nobodies. Lodges are clubs. So they like to put people of like mind. You club them together. But it was the levity of the time. It's the spirit of the 18th century. Like the whole spirit of the 18th century is summed up in that phrase of Louis XV. Après moi, le déluge. After me, the flood. So I know everything is going to pieces. That the ideas of Christianity and Catholicism and all this is being eaten up by the termites. Why should I care? Says Louis XV. It's after me. Sure enough, his son was beheaded. But I don't care. That's the spirit of Louis XV. Because he himself, you look at his picture, his beautiful painting. He's a beautiful man. But in his eyes, you can see the liberal expression. He looks like a liberal. He's got this worldly demeanor. And he was morally weak. That is, he had lots of mistresses. And, he was levity itself, levity of morals itself. A very weak monarch that contrasted with the firmness of Louis XIV. The firmness of Louis XIV would never to be seen again. Now, Louis XIV, at the end of his life, realized that something fishy was coming. Even before Freemasonry would come, he knew that the Orleans family was bad and worldly, and they had the wrong mentality, and would collaborate with Protestants, or would not show any commitment for the preservation of the faith in France. And so, even if Philippe d'Orléans was a great general, he preferred not to use him as a great general and face several defeats at the hands of the English and the Austrians than to send him on the battlefield. He didn't want the Orléans family to grow because he knew they had the wrong mentality. I'm talking about the later converted Louis XIV at the end of his life. When Louis XIV suffers, he's punished by God for his previous sins, and he sees that something bad is coming for France. So even before Freemasonry came, he saw the mentalities were not good and that the court was rotten. The morals of the courts were rotten morals. And that was part of Louis XIV's fault, because he brought all the nobles in Versailles and gave them nothing to do. They were bored. They were not granted responsibilities. Because in the youth of Louis XIV, there was this rebellion of the nobles. So he wanted to have them under control, but they were bored. And then all they cared for was their pleasure. And they became a rotten elite. Then, being cut off from the population, they became a useless elite. But they were still very rich and influential. And the French nobles are the ones who did the French Revolution. No revolution was more aristocratic than the French Revolution. The French people at large never cared for the French Revolution. It's the nobles and the clergy who did the French Revolution. So prominent revolutionists were members of the clergy. The most famous one is Talleyrand. But l'Abbé Grégoire aussi was a famous, and some others whose name I don't remember exactly. So it was a levity of the age. And it's a thoughtless levity. It's this refusal to study the matter, and to study the gravity of the matter. That the enemies are truly organized. In consequence, the sect of the Freemasons grew with a rapidity beyond conception in the course of a century and a half, until it came to be able, by means of fraud and of audacity, to gain such an entrance into every rank of the state as to seem to be almost its ruling power. Marie Antoinette says, "Ici tout le monde en est. Here, everybody is of it." It's a state within the state. It has a full controller. You sense that, even today. That is when Pat Buchanan, made headways. Then the dragon woke up from its siesta. In normal circumstances, everything is Freemasonry business as usual. But there are some exceptional moments where the dragon has to rise and to show its power, and then you see how vast their power is. It's the beast of the apocalypse. It has 10 heads. It is so big. You chop one head off, you got the other 9 heads there. And then the head grows again. It's a hydra. You cannot, it's very hard to reach its core. Its power is undisputed. This swift and formidable advance has brought upon the Church, upon the powers of princes, upon the public well-being, precisely that grievous harm which our predecessors had long before foreseen. Because the advent of this new city, or the return of the city of Satan, came through violence. They say we are philanthropic, we are lovers of humanity, and so on and so forth. But the advent came through a great effusion of blood. So it's a very bloody thing, the beast of the apocalypse. And the beast carries the great whore of Babylon. Then it comes to some stability, like here in the US or in Western Europe. It brings about some stability in some parts of the world. And there you have what is called the Great Babylon, which is carried by the beast. But the beast has committed great effusion of blood. Such a condition has been reached that henceforth there will be grave reason to fear, not indeed for the Church, for her foundation is much too firm to be overturned by the effort of man, but for the states in which prevails the power, either of the sect of which we are speaking, or of other sects not dissimilar, which lend themselves to it as disciples and subordinates. You still had, when Leo XIII was still speaking, you still had, the Austrian Empire. That was a great and big Catholic entity, a major Catholic entity in Central Europe. And François Joseph, emperor, was he was a Josephist supremacist, so he did not yet understand the errors of the ways of his forefather, but he started to wake up on the evil of Freemasonry, and so Austria was kind of free from Masonic influence. We know it very well at the episode of the election of St. Pius X. What did he do? Rampolla affair. So François Joseph had his secret services, and he would investigate the background of all the major players in the church. And so he did a great service to the church. But at the moment of his election, Pius X was not very grateful for that. He made an edict that the civil power would not be able to intervene. That's the intervention of François Joseph in that election is a sign that a good Catholic prince has a say in the nomination process. The harmony between church and state does not exclude a good Catholic prince to have a say. We don't exclude that. But that power belongs only to a prince who is a Catholic, so that he can intervene as a backup. If he finds something which is utterly wrong, he can veto at least one election. It's normal. It's part of the relationship of the two powers. That's good. Just like, the religious power has a say to anoint a king. Like Pepin the Short was endorsed by the Pope of his time, Charles the Great. Those were backed by the spiritual power of the time and granted greater legitimacy by the religious authority. Or like UKP was also, he got the help of the bishops to be put on the throne. That's why in the consecration of a king, the bishops hold the kingly the crown. The peers of the king, that is the nobleman, the dukes, hold the crown on the other side, but also the bishop uphold the crown. So there is a relationship between the crown and the religious power. Now this was an instance, that reveals that Austria was preserved from Freemasonry, that the Emperor of Austria knew what he was doing. So what did Freemasonry do? What did they do?
They destroyed much of the monastic orders.
No. What did they do immediately 10 years later?
Established their own government.
World War I. World War I led to... What's the object of World War I? Destroy the Austrian Empire. The last great Catholic empire. By the end of World War I, the original aim of the French Revolution is achieved. No more Catholic states. But there will be a resurgence later on, after Fatima, with a reprieve in Spain and in Portugal and other places in South America. There will be the reprieve. But at the end of World War I, the situation is fairly bleak. All Western powers are under the sway of Freemasonry. but you see in the example of Austria that these people were very happy. They were ruled in a Catholic way, and that implied that the government's job was to uproot Freemasonry, and they would do it, and they did it successfully. So to go around the obstacle, then the Masonry fomented a war, and then stupidly, the Kaiser Wilhelm fell into that war. He was probably himself a Mason, but he was also, a megalomaniac. And then the French Republic wanted to go to war, and it was backed by the English. So there was this. The World War I was a setup, and World War I also sent Pius X to his grave, because Pius X knew that it was going to lead to the remodeling of Western Europe. So, but for the states in which prevails the power either of the sect of which we are speaking, or the other sect, not dissimilar, which lend themselves to it as disciples and subordinate. So a great fear, Leo XIII says, I've got a great fear of their power. For this reason, we no sooner came to the helm of the Church that we clearly saw and felt to be our duty to use our authority to the very utmost against so vast an evil. We have several times already, as occasion served, attacked certain chief points of the teaching which showed in a special manner the perverse influence of Masonic opinions. Thus, in our apostolic letter, Quod Apostolici Muneris, we endeavored to refute the monstrous doctrine of the socialist and communist. Afterwards, in another beginning, Arcanum, we took pains to defend and explain the true and genuine idea of domestic life, of which marriage is the spring and origin. One of the big goals of Freemasonry is the destruction of marriage, the destruction of the family. It's always one of their main objectives. And they never stop destroying the family. So even when people are living in a divorced way or anything, it's not enough for them. They must promote homosexuality. Because homosexuality is a sin that cries vengeance to God because it's destroying the family. Homosexuality per se is a horrible thing. The action that man does on another man when they sleep together is disgusting. Okay, that fills God with disgust. But also, the main reason why homosexuality cries for vengeance, because it destroys irrevocably the institution of the family. And that's the aim of Freemasonry, the destruction of family. And again, in that which begins Deo Turnum, we describe the ideal of political government conformed to the Christian wisdom, which is marvelously in harmony on the one hand with the natural order of things, on the other hand with the well-being of both sovereign princes and nations. So they destroy this harmony between church and state. Separation of church and state. That's their big idea. So he said, I denounce the fruits, I denounce the wrong ideas, but now I would like to denounce the stem, the trunk, where or the root where it's coming from. It is now our intention, following the example of our predecessors, directly to treat of the Masonic Society itself, of its whole teaching, of its aims, and of its manner of thinking and acting, in order to bring more and more into light its power for evil, and to do what we can to arrest the contagion of this fatal plague. So he wants to expose it. The key enemy of Freemasonry is exposure. The devil hates exposure.
Father, would
Yes.
you say that Freemasonry is involved in the destruction of morals, do they have the intention of depopulating the entire...
It's part of their ideal is to bring humanity back to 1 billion men. Yeah. Well,
Really?
all these, you notice, contraception came within the same bracket of years in all Western nations. Contraception came in the 60s. Then abortion in all the countries is voted in the early 70s, the same bracket of years. When there is a Catholic nation like the Philippines or Ireland, then they are capable out of flexibility to delay it 20 years. But in all the other nations that were under their rule, they brought these laws within the same brackets of laws. 10 years after abortion, they bring the reimbursement of abortion by state money. And then later on, they bring gay marriage or euthanasia, all these campaigns to happen at the same time. So this shows that it's their part of their agenda, population control, or the new morality, this earth consciousness and all that. So it shows a unity of intent. There are several organized bodies which, though differing in name, in ceremonial, in form and origin, are nevertheless so bound together by community of purpose and by the similarity of their main opinions as to make in fact one thing with the sect of the Freemasons, which is a kind of center whence they all go forth and whither they all return. It's the particularity of the beast, it has several heads. They love to put their eggs in several baskets because it's safer that way. It's going to spring elsewhere. So they have a multiplicity of different rites, different groupings. There are different shapes of Freemasonry. So you got the Jewish Freemasonry, the B'nai B'rith, and probably other sects that we don't know of. Among the Gentiles, you got plenty of different sects. Grand Lodge, Grand Orient. Now the Grand Lodge also has different rites. And you got the Rosicrucians, you got the Illuminatis, you got the P2 Lodge that we don't know what kind of branch it's coming from exactly. So you got different branches that appear, and always it's, I say it in English, in French we say protéiforme. It changes its forms and shapes. So you cannot get a hold of them all. When you grab one head, you cannot get a hold of the entire monster. That's the way they want it. It's better that way. They fight their war in different corps, in different separate units. But they can, at the same time, assemble together and shoot in the same direction. Unlike the Catholics, who are very bad, in warfare, at least in the last 2 centuries, because we don't coordinate ourselves all that much, but they do have a coordination. Now these no longer show desire to remain concealed, for they hold their meetings in the daylight and before the public eyes, and publish their own newspapers, organ. And yet, when thoroughly understood, they are found still to retain the nature and the habits of secret societies. So they keep a public dimension always, and there they can state their intent, which is to destroy Christianity and to create a secular society. Because the speech of Clemenceau in the French Parliament, when Clemenceau attacks the church, when Combes attacks the church, when Jules Grévy and all the other guys attacked the church in the French Parliament, they would not mince their words. They said, for instance, that these good nuns, the Sisters of Charity, are like vermin. They are like rats. We must eradicate those nuns. Their hospitals are a plague on our national territory. So they would use very vehement anti-Catholic words So that's in the open. They don't hide their hatred for the Catholic Church. There was a time of Leo XIII, but at the same time, they still need the secret, because not all of them are front men. So there's going to be the front man, and he will have the backing of the medias or the book printings or other channels. That front man will be backed by plenty of others. So that's the character. So there is a public dimension of Freemasonry, and there is a secret dimension of it. There are many things like the mysteries, which it is the fixed rule to hide with extreme care, not only from strangers but from very many members also, like the satanic rites that are taking place at some stage. And such as their secret and final designs, the names of the chief leaders. That's the case of the Opus Dei. Opus Dei will not tell anyone, and they won't tell the Vatican who is in charge of the Opus Dei. Yes?
It said that the devil would create a mockery of the church. So wouldn't it say that the what is public is like the priests who are sending, and the private secret is like the monasteries? Is a mockery of the monasteries.
Mm-hmm. Well, they make their parallel religion. They are trying to mock the new church is a mockery of the church, with the Pope with his clown nose and everything, or the Rio de Janeiro thing. But they mean to establish a religion. They are religious persons. They want to worship. So, but they don't want to show their final mysteries, because people are not ready for them. They're not yet ready. They are getting there, Lady Gaga, all these horrible things going on. But, Lady Gaga, when I was in a ferry boat in the Philippines, and they were playing that thing on the screen. That screen is satanic pornography. It's a satanic gay and lesbian pornography. And that's on the mainstream. But in the 18th century, you could not preach satanic and gay pornography. Father Joe says in Tacloban, why Tacloban was hit? Because there is a lot of sorcery there. And it's a hotbed of Freemasonry in the Philippines. One of the explanations. But there are still very simple people there, and we weep for them. But Masonry could not, in the time of Leo XIII, show all its designs. But as it wins, the mask goes up, because what they want is the worship of Satan to become more explicit, or the satanic morals, to become more explicit. That's what they want.
Father, how come that a lot of people are drawn to Freemasonry because of mysticism?
Most of them is convenience or worldliness, connections, to facilitate business.
They kind of envelope that mysticism.
Yeah, I met many people who have proposed Freemasonry, and once they turn down the offer, they say they are told, well, it's too bad for you. You're gonna be stuck where you are, or you're not gonna get many contracts. So they clearly state that the advantages that you get from the. I'll just finish the paragraph. So they try to hide these secrets, such as their secret and final design, the name of their chief leaders. That's the Opus Dei. Opus Dei is well known for that. So they have, I don't remember how they named the guy who is the front Monsignor in charge, but he's not in charge of the Opus Dei. They will not even reveal who is in charge of this section of the Opus Dei in America. We don't know. They won't reveal it. They are very careful for that. It's very important for them. And they have an oath of secrecy. And certain secret and inner meetings, as well as their decisions, and the way and means of carrying them out. So this they hide. how things come about. We get to know about it after it has happened. This is, no doubt, the object of the manifold difference among the members as to right, office, and privilege, of the received distinction of orders and grades, and that of severe discipline which is maintained. So there is a discipline which is maintained within the lodges. And some are punished by death. Not always. Not all those who drop out from Freemasonry are punished by death. But when a great harm is inflicted on Freemasonry by somebody who drops from it, then that person is usually put to death. That's only then, because they don't want to be portrayed as murderers. That's why those who reveal the list of cardinals and bishops, those were put to death, because it goes against Masonic ethics. It's ratting upon the brethren. So that's punishable by death. Like in the mafia, if you rat on your mafia, they will punish you. In Freemasonry, it's the same. So I think they put you to death if you inflict great evil on the organization when you leave. If you don't, they may not kill you.